Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. If you're a founder, you probably know that feeling of just spinning your wheels while everyone else seems to be sprinting ahead, right? Well, you're in the right place. Today we're diving into a really incredible framework to kill that frantic dopamine-driven anxiety of feeling left behind. We're skipping the fluffy self-help stuff entirely. Instead, we're going to break down the actual biology and psychology of why we lose focus and exactly how to reverse engineer our way out of it. Okay, so here's our game plan to swap out that business anxiety for extreme clarity. First, the panic of falling behind. Then, the cheap dopamine trap. Next, 3 pillars for life, adopting a growth mindset, reverse engineering your purpose, and finally, clarity is motivation. Let's get right into it.
All right, part 1, the panic of falling behind.
Look, as a founder, you absolutely know that heavy, sinking feeling in your gut when you're just not where you want to be. When that panic hits, there's always one rapid-fire question looping in your brain. What do I do next? I mean, you've got 100 things pulling at you, right? Marketing, product, random fires to put out. It creates this crazy, paralyzing friction. You're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but somehow you feel completely stuck.
And eventually, you hit that ultimate admission of defeat for any high achiever. I'm lost. How do you get rid of this? Well, the solution we're unpacking today isn't some vague advice to just trust the process. It's a rigid, highly logical approach to short-circuiting that exact feeling of being totally lost. It tackles exactly what's going wrong up in your head.
Because here's the biological reality of your panic. Your brain is literally freaking out because you haven't given it a specific target to chase. The source material defines anxiety in a really fascinating structural way. It's not just general worry. It is literally the process where the brain panics because it has nothing important to pin down and follow. Without that anchor, your brain's internal alarm bells, they just keep ringing and ringing.
Which brings us to section 2, the cheap dopamine trap.
So when we leave that target blank, our brain doesn't just chill out. No, it starts aggressively hunting for cheap, immediate alternatives to satisfy its evolutionary wiring. We really can't skip over this uncomfortable scientific truth from our source material. Without a pinned target, human evolution actually drives us to get addicted to destructive habits just to get a quick dopamine hit. When anxiety sits there without a true purpose, we naturally drift toward intense, artificial stimuli. Whether that's drugs, porn, or toxic relationships, your brain is absolutely desperate for anything that gives a rapid, unearned dopamine spike to mask the panic.
The big takeaway here is that this toxic trap is just the biological consequence of a wandering mind screaming for dopamine fix. And hey, as an entrepreneur, your cheap dopamine might look a little different. Maybe it's obsessively refreshing your Stripe dashboard, or endlessly sorting emails, or picking petty fights on Twitter. Basically, you'll do anything to feel a fake sense of action and reward when your true purpose is missing in action.
Moving on to section 3, 3 pillars for life.
To pull ourselves out of that trap, we need 3 essential things for human life and business. It's a super simple, logical framework. Number 1, you need something to pin, a massive, unshakable goal. Number 2, you need a process that follows to accomplish the pinned, so your daily operating cadence. And number 3, reinforcement of this process. You need the discipline to just keep executing and rewarding those right behaviors, day in and day out.
You ever notice how hyper-focused founders don't seem to get crushed by anxiety? It's simply because they've locked in these 3 pillars. They are so ridiculously dedicated to working toward a true purpose that their brains literally do not have the spare bandwidth to panic or go hunting for cheap dopamine. Their internal system is just locked down, efficient, and constantly moving forward.
Next up, section 4, adopting a growth mindset.
But how do you actually find that massive thing to pin in the first place? Well, we have to look at the psychological lens we use to view ourselves. Finding your true target absolutely requires you to reflect on your capacity to evolve and to tackle challenges with a genuine growth mindset. Think about it. You can't discover a massive legacy-defining target if, deep down, you think your skills are fixed or that your current limits are permanent. You have to see yourself as someone capable of massive, continuous evolution.
Life and business, they're kind of like an art form. The source material uses this brilliant metaphor of an artist who draws, scratches, and erases. They choose, they mix, they paint. In the middle of the process, the canvas looks like total chaos, right? But the artist knows that doing this messy work right now is exactly what creates the masterpiece at the end. It is absolutely okay if things are imperfect for you right now. You have to give yourself permission to scratch and erase. All right, section 5, reverse engineering your purpose.
Now we're taking all this philosophy and turning it into hard, actionable execution. The source heavily stresses that figuring out your life is definitely not a bottom-to-top guessing game. It has to be a deliberate top-to-bottom procedure. Most founders just wake up, stare at a pile of immediate tasks at the bottom, and cross their fingers that doing enough of them will magically get them to the top. This framework demands the exact opposite. You have to define the absolute pinnacle first and then work your way backward.
To kick off this top-down process, you've got to answer this ultimate, maybe slightly morbid, but totally clarifying macro-level question. How would you want to be remembered after your death? In just one sentence. This is it. This is your ultimate thing to pin. Because if you can distill your entire existence and your business ambition into one single sentence, you suddenly have an incredible filter for every single decision you're going to make.
Based on that one deathbed sentence, your first step backward is to figure out what massive goals you need to hit within the next 5 years. What specific business metrics, what level of impact, what scale do you absolutely have to reach in 5 years to make sure you're on track to become that exact person you just described? Okay, now let's zoom in a bit more. What specific milestones do you need to smash in the next 3 months to make that 5-year vision even possible? 5 years is way too abstract to act on today. But 3 months? That's a standard business quarter. It's close enough to feel urgent, but long enough to actually get something highly significant done. What 3-month sprints are going to build that 5-year empire? And finally, we zoom all the way down to the micro level. What exact, specific task must you execute in the next 2 hours to build toward those 3 months? Boom. This is where the anxiety officially dies. You don't have to stress about the whole mountain anymore. You only have to focus 100% of your energy on the very next step, just the next 2 hours.
And that brings us to section 6. Clarity is your motivation. This whole zooming in process, from your legacy right down to the next 2 hours, completely wipes out the blurriness that causes founder burnout. And that leads to the final massive takeaway from our source material. Motivation is the clarity. You cannot follow what is blurry. This quote literally sums up the whole philosophy. So many of us think we have a motivation problem, or maybe a discipline problem. But actually, we just have a clarity problem. You don't need more hustle. You definitely don't need more cheap dopamine. You just need sharp, reverse-engineered clarity. Face your work with a growth mindset, and honestly, the motivation just becomes automatic.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with a provocative thought. Really the only question that matters right now. What are you doing for the next 2 hours to build your legacy? Seriously, think about it. Map out your top-to-bottom procedure, close those extra browser tabs, and let's get to work.